Hello, it looks like I am live. So happy Thursday. I am Molly, and I will introduce myself a little bit. I'm going to be doing this live alone tonight, so just for this week, and then we will have a new guest joining me next week. So for those of you who do not know, I am Molly, and I am an OCD and mental health advocate. I work for OCD, and I am a peer advisor for OCD. So what that means is when members call in to get treatment for their OCD, they are assigned a peer advisor, and that could be me. I am one of them on the team. There's some other really great peers as well. And we just kind of help support members as they go through their therapy sessions as people who have lived experience with OCD. And with going through an OCD's therapy program ourselves, we are there to help answer any questions, concerns, hesitations, things like that. And I absolutely love it. And I also, as part of my job, I get to host these lives every Thursday, and they are so fun to get to know people. There are always some people who are here every week, which is incredible. And then there are also a lot of new faces around here each week, which is also really fun. So I'm going to start answering some questions. And if you have any more, just throw them on up there, and I will do my best to get to them. So Jason here asked, why does OCD symptoms get worse when sleep, angry, hungry, or tired? And then he asked as well, and then he asked any tips on that. So I do agree. I think a lot of times that when we are already stressed or, like you said, tired, angry, anything like that, our symptoms can get worse because OCD is really going to try to kind of wedge its way in there where it's not welcome. And that's, kind of part of OCD is trying to handle those emotions. And so when we are sad, sleepy, angry, I know a lot of times when I am in, a little tiff with my partner or with a family member, it makes the OCD symptoms that much worse. I would say tips on that is to recognize that, to know that you are doing what you can, and that it's okay for symptoms to get worse and better throughout our days, throughout, individual days themselves. That is kind of as well part of having OCD, is that it waxes and wanes a little bit. I'm sorry, I'm going to move my computer a little bit. Is that the symptoms can wax and wane and go, come and go as they do. So being aware of it, I think, is a really great first step. And I would say, just kind of keep pushing through and recognize that any emotion that you're having, whether it is anger, sadness, I know hungry and sleepy are not emotions, but they can kind of be sometimes, all encompassing. And it's important to recognize that they're valid too. Anything that you're feeling is valid and is okay. And Aaliyah, so I am able to see the questions before the live starts, which is kind of fun. So if you do drop one in there before 8:00 Eastern time, I do get to see them. I don't know if I can post them beforehand, but I do get to see them. So that's pretty cool. And Kay is thanking me for hosting this, and I thank you for joining and for being a part of the NoCD community. I'm really excited to do these lives each week. And then, so I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce your name, and I apologize for that. But you have asked, you said it is hard to stop compulsions. I'm doing compulsions to avoid compulsions, and that's become a compulsion. And that is, as well, like I was saying earlier, is recognizing that, I think, is already a pretty big step. So knowing that it is a compulsion is step one in stopping it, honestly. And I would say, is if you are able to, of course, get in with a therapist who practices ERP, exposure and response prevention, because that really is the best treatment for treating OCD. So, of course, NoCD, we have wonderful therapists who would be able to help you with this. But just in general, I'd say being aware that that is a compulsion is a good first step. Kay has asked, any tips on how to handle unsolicited, helpful advice? I love that in quotes. From well-meaning family or friends about how to deal with my OCD. Yeah, I would say I think it's important to be open. I know that is something that I have been practicing in my own life, is just sharing when I'm struggling, sharing when sharing what OCD is. And I think that as well OCD is very misunderstood. So having helpful resources when people say things like, I'm so OCD, I like to organize, or I really like to clean my kitchen. That, of course, could be a symptom of OCD, but that's not OCD. You can't be OCD. It is a disorder. So I would say be as open as you can, especially since you've asked for when they are well-meaning. So when they are trying to help you and they maybe just don't know what to say, it's, they can't know what to say unless we help them, I think, sometimes. So I would say, just be as open as you can and let them know if they're saying something that is hurtful, that is not helpful. Tell them so that they can help you and tell them maybe what they could say instead that might be a little bit more kind. That would be my tip on that. So Monica did ask about, she says, I need to hear someone talk about the fear of the intrusive thoughts with harm and suicide OCD. So this is something that we kind of say often, but it is very true that OCD is OCD is OCD. So the thoughts are not the problem. And I know that's really difficult to believe sometimes and to really understand. But if you are having intrusive thoughts about harm, about suicide, about, anything that is not, that is a little bit more taboo in terms of typical things that we talk about in this society, that's okay. They're not who you are as a person. They are thoughts that your brain is having, and you happen to be a person who has a brain. So they're going to pop up when you don't want them to a lot of the times. And the more we push against them, the more they're going to keep coming back. So, in suicide OCD, harm OCD, these are not themes that I personally have dealt too much with, other than kind of passing here and there. But as well as, allowing those thoughts to exist, allowing yourself to recognize that they're not you, they're just thoughts that you happen to be having at that moment. And that your brain's going to be really creative and come up with all kinds of things. And it's okay to feel scared, because thoughts can be really scary sometimes. And Christina has asked, why are the thoughts so strong? I think there are, as much as you're not going to want to hear this answer, there are some questions in the world that are unanswerable. And that's okay. And that's something that's really hard to understand. And again, really hard to believe when you have OCD, because OCD strives for that certainty and it wants to answer that question. And I know that I as well spent many years trying to get to the root of that question and trying to, answer why these thoughts are plaguing me. And we don't, necessarily need an answer, Christina. So, there are some genetic factors to OCD. There are some environmental factors, but the thoughts that we try to push against and the thoughts that the saying is, what we resist persists. And the more we try to push against them or try to get rid of them, the more they're going to keep coming back. So again, allowing them to exist, allowing and, accepting their presence, which is not the same as accepting them as, as truth or as reality. It is just accepting that there are thoughts that are in your head and that are really strong and scary. And that's okay. There are some really great questions, and I apologize for the silence. I'm just trying to find some questions that I could answer a little bit more easily. So Luca has asked, how should we deal with the thoughts when they feel so real and scary? It's so hard to accept uncertainty. Yeah, it is. Again, that's not the answer that you probably are looking for, but it is. Even I do consider myself in recovery in the sense that I've gone through ERP treatment, and I have a lot of really good tools that I use on a daily basis. That's not to say that the thoughts I get are still, that they are still definitely scary. They are real. They feel so real sometimes. And it is still really hard to accept that uncertainty. I'm not going to sugarcoat that and say that recovery is all rainbows and butterflies and nothing ever scares me anymore, because that would just be a lie. And I think that's a really important piece to remember, that, we still deal with uncertainty every day, and there's really no way to change that. The treatment that you get for OCD does not give you certainty. It helps you accept that uncertainty. And I know that's an answer without really giving an answer, but that is kind of the treatment. And how to deal with them is, again, just accepting them, accepting that they are thoughts, that they are, I like to compare them to clouds, that they just kind of pass and go, from one side of the sky to the other, and they kind of go about their way. If we sit there and we stared at this one cloud, it could become really distressing if it was something, and relating it back to a thought, if it was something that really caused us anxiety. The more we stared, the more we tried to assign meaning to it or assign value to it, the more it's going to scare us and try to, keep getting back into our mind. So just let it be there, accept that it's a thought, and kind of go about your day as much as you can with the thoughts there. It's really important to know that we're not trying to get rid of the thoughts. We're trying to live a fulfilling life with the thoughts. So I hope that answers your question, Luca, in a non-reassuring way. Kevin has asked, is it normal to feeling of hopelessness, or that thing will never get better as part of it? Yeah, I think that's a pretty common thing with OCD, is a lot of times with OCD or other mental illnesses, there is a feeling of hopelessness, because it feels like what we're in right now is going to be our forever. And that's not the case. And, it's in kind of a weird way. It's when really good things happen to us, we never have that thought of, what if I am always like this, because that's not realistic. And we go about our days and things get worse from there. And that best feeling ever never sticks around forever. It just can't. That's not realistic. And it's the same with these bad, I don't want to say bad feelings, but these feelings that are scary, or that are real, or that are, anxious and scared. They never stick around forever. They can't. It's, again, just physically not possible. So I think it's important to, kind of relate that to that. But yeah, to feel hopeless is a really scary and uncomfortable feeling. And with every other feeling that comes up with OCD, it's part of the process, and it's okay to feel like that. But I do want you to know, Kevin, there is hope. There is hope out there. I felt hopeless in my life as well. And I have so much hope now for my future. And everyone's journey is very different. I don't mean to say that's always the case for me, of course, but there's a whole community of people out there who know what it's like to go through what you're going through. So I'll leave it on that. What is the best way to handle rumination type of OCD? So ruminating is, to this day, my biggest compulsion. It's something that is a daily part of my life, and I'm not, again, going to lie and say that it's gone forever. It has gotten better in treatment that I've gone through, and in the skills that I've learned in my recovery, or in my therapy journey are things that I can use. The way to handle it is just like any other compulsion. And I know that it's hard to recognize that rumination is a compulsion sometimes, but it is, because it is a choice. So a thought pops into our head that is out of our control. That is just a thing that happens to our brain, just like our heart beats, just like our blood flows through our body. It's not a choice that we make, and there's nothing we can do to stop that thought, if you will. The way we react to the thought is ruminating, and that it sounds like that's something that you are experiencing, Rich, and I am as well. A lot of times is a thought will come up, and my reaction is to ruminate on it, to think that I can solve this thing, or I can get to the bottom of why I'm feeling this way, or anything like that. And again, it is a choice to ruminate. So catching it early on is really important, which is really, really difficult. I know with mental compulsions, it's hard. It's hard to know that you're even doing it a lot of the times, and it's hard to know how to stop. But again, just like with any other compulsion, letting it be and trying to do the things that still bring you joy and still you enjoy in your life is kind of the way that I have tried to get through things. And I know that getting outside in nature is helpful for me. I don't mean to say it's a cure, it's a fix by any means, but it is a way sometimes to kind of get your mind out of what you're going through. And for me personally, it is a way to recognize that there are bigger things than me. And I think just being out in nature, feeling the breeze, hearing birds chirping and looking at bugs and looking at trees and the wind, all those kinds of things are a really helpful way when I find myself ruminating and just kind of stuck in this rumination cycle. So I hope that helps as a way to help handle your rumination as well. And I do see a lot of really good questions, and I would love to be able to get to every single one of you, and I know that that's not possible. So I'm going to do my best to ask all of these, or to answer all of these that I can. So Jennifer asked, any advice for contamination OCD during this pandemic? It's so hard. So that is honestly a pretty common, I think a lot of people let me backtrack. I think a lot of people are impacted by the pandemic in many ways. Contamination OCD is reacting to germs or illnesses or viruses. And as we all know, everyone that we know is impacted by COVID in some way. So you, Jennifer, and everyone else that is here are brave for opening up and saying that you have a problem and that you're trying to work on it. That's already a really big step. And I feel proud of that. And I want you to recognize that, to feel that as well. As far as advice, so I would say that I am not a clinician. And as much as I would love to give some advice, I can't and shouldn't because that's not my forte. I would say if you can, try to find a therapist who specializes in OCD and uses exposure and response prevention, or ERP, because that is the gold standard for treating OCD. Contamination OCD and any other type of OCD involves obsessions, and then it involves compulsions to temporarily relieve those obsessions. They don't work in the long run, the compulsions. They might bring down your anxiety for a little bit, but over time, it keeps coming back. So I would say recognizing the obsessions, recognizing what your compulsions are, and then trying to find a way to stop those compulsions is kind of the simple way of explaining ERP. But again, find a therapist who can give actual clinical advice is the best bet, Jennifer. Yes. So Normal One asks, which I think is a fun name because normal is so relative, but can there be obsessions and compulsions about trivial things, thoughts that don't even make sense? Yes, absolutely. So there can be obsessions about anything. There are sometimes they're called neutral obsessions in the sense that they're not about harm or sexual intrusive thoughts or violence or anything like that. They might be about, saying a word, and did I say the word correctly, and did I spell it correctly, and did I use the correct punctuation, and things that really have no, like you said, are trivial. So yes, to answer your question, yes, obsessions can really be about anything that our brain is so creative, and it will come up with whatever it can to catch us, if you will. So yeah, to answer your question, it absolutely can be compulsions about that as well. So Abby asked, Any tips for somatic OCD? The intrusive thoughts are hard to fight when there's also a physical response as well. So for those of you who aren't, who don't know exactly what somatic OCD is, so somatic OCD, also sometimes called sensory motor OCD, is a subtype of OCD that deals with our physical bodily reactions. So blinking, breathing, heart beating, things like that, that are normal, natural, everyday things that happen to our bodies, our body's physical reactions. So I do know some people will have somatic OCD about going to the bathroom, things that we need to do every single day. So the tips, I would say, the physical response can be really challenging because it is uncontrollable a lot of times. And it's, again, things, obsessing over things that that we can't control can be very, very challenging, Abby. So you're not alone in that. And I appreciate you opening up and, asking this question about that. I would say tips for somatic OCD as well would be to get with a therapist. And I hate that that's my go-to, but I don't want to give tips, advice on things that I can't be answering. So you're not alone in what you're going through. And I know it's really challenging, especially like you said, when there are physical responses as well. So I think that's an important step, is recognizing that is challenging and admitting that it's difficult is a good first step there. And then, like I said, trying exposures that will, and then, responding differently to those exposures is really how we get through our OCD. All right, let me see. Oops, I scrolled all the way down, of course. So Juan asked about, he said, I had one of my main intrusive thoughts go away for a bit, and I forgot it, but it came back now. Why do intrusive thoughts come and go? It feels horrible when they come back. So Juan, my first piece of advice here would be to have some compassion. I know it's hard when you're in it, and it's really scary when you're going through these. But again, like I kind of was just saying, is that these thoughts are not in our control. Our brain comes up with them, and how we respond to them is the important part. So the fact that they come and go is just part of the process. The fact that it sounds like someone went away and came back and you forgot about it came back. Yeah, and that's to be expected, honestly. There are things that will, I know from speaking from my experience, I will think of something and then I'll be like, well, I have not had that obsession in years. Why is that all of a sudden here again? And I don't know. There's not necessarily an answer. And that's okay to not know, and just to approach it in the same way that you would approach any other obsession, honestly. So I would say, if you can practice exposures with that is the way to go for that. Mark asked, how can you be in a successful relationship when you struggle with sexual OCD? So I'm not entirely sure, Mark, if you mean sexual orientation OCD or like sexually intrusive thoughts. But honestly, the answer would be kind of the same either way. Be open. I would say be very open with your partner about what you're experiencing. Recognize that it is part of a mental illness. It's not who you are as a person. It can, OCD can be a part of who you are, but the thoughts, even when they are sexual, they're not you. They are just a part of what your body is doing, honestly. And you're just kind of along for the ride. So I would say step one would be just being open with whoever you're with so that they are, aware of what you're going through. If you mean sexual orientation OCD, again, just recognizing that they are not you is a really important step. And I would definitely bring this up to a therapist who can help with that, a little bit more specifics on that, because that's not, again, something I can really give advice on. I can speak from my personal experience that I am in a healthy, happy relationship. for the past 10 years. And I've had sexual intrusive thoughts. I'm not going to, again, sugarcoat it and say that that doesn't affect me. It absolutely does. It can affect romance and intimacy and sex and just being, happy and healthy with him. So I would, just be as open as you can and try to share what you're going through with them. And then, I'm sorry, there's so many here that I'm trying to get to. So this person has asked, does OCD ever go away? So to put it lightly, OCD is a chronic illness. So that means that it's around for a long time. Some part of OCD treatment is recognizing, again, that we don't know the answers to a lot of things, that, the answer maybe not is kind of a lot of people's go-to for questions like this, because we just don't know. We can't know what the future holds. But I will say, like I said, that, OCD is chronic, so it is something that typically is around for a long time, but it is manageable. So the symptoms might not get better necessarily. They might still, the thoughts might still be there, and the compulsions might be a part of our lives if we let them, I guess. So, but we can definitely work on the reaction to, and I'm sorry, I meant to say the obsessions a second ago, can always be there, but we can work on the compulsions. We can work on the way that we react to those thoughts. So I hope that answers your question, that there isn't necessarily an answer. And yes, so Gage asked, is it normal to feel like you don't have OCD after getting diagnosed? So I feel like I say this in every live, for those of you who are here every week, is that any question that starts with, is it normal to? The answer is almost always yes, but I also don't want to give that reassurance, so maybe. OCD is called the doubting disease, or the disease of doubt, and that is because it will have you doubting everything. So to, again, just kind of answer it in a simple way, a lot of people, even once they have that diagnosis, have those fears of, what if it's not OCD? What if I am, what if these thoughts are just who I am and it's not actually OCD? And to, again, to be in recovery of OCD kind of means that we need to accept that that might be true. Maybe we don't have OCD and those are, just who we are. And that's the answer I'm going to give you there, Gage. And I see somebody asked, is there a cure for OCD? No, there is not. It's not a disease in that sense. It is an illness, so there's no cure. There are just ways to manage it better. So it's not like we go to therapy and then we are cured and we are, fixed, if you will. We instead go to therapy and we learn how to live with the thoughts and accept that they are a part of us, and that they may always be. And it's, again, reacting to them is really the skills that we'll learn. And then they've also asked, what type of OCD do you have? So the thing with OCD is, as I said earlier, it's all OCD. So I know a lot of people will, it brings them a little bit of comfort to break it down into different themes. Some people don't really believe in that. It's, kind of a personal thing, but the main types of OCD or subtypes or themes that I have had is moral scrupulosity, or moral scrup, and then as well, just right OCD, magical thinking, somatic OCD a little bit here and there. But to be honest with you, I've had it all. I think that's a pretty common thing in the OCD community, is that it does not stick to one theme. It is like whack-a-mole, in the sense that as soon as you kind of beat or get a handle on one area of the OCD, it will pop up with something new and something different, and the flavor of the day. So I've kind of handles it all, I guess, which I think is pretty common with other people as well. And yeah, I see a lot of people just kind of sharing some thoughts that they've had, which can be really difficult. Yeah. And Aaliyah asked, any tips on depression that comes with OCD? I feel horrible. So have some grace, Aaliyah. I'm sorry that you are going through, it sounds like a pretty difficult time right now. And OCD does have a lot of other comorbidities. So other mental illnesses will sometimes kind of be along for the ride as well. So I would say my first tip, or just, piece of reminder, is that you're not alone in this. And I know that is cliche and might not really make you feel better, but it is true. There are so many people out there, if not in your immediate, family, friends, loved ones. There's a community of people on the NoCD app, on the YouTube page, on social media, and just so many other places that people who have OCD kind of come together and share their experiences with OCD, with depression, and other mental illnesses as well. So I would say, just doing what you can to get through it. I know that OCD can impact our outlook on life. And like somebody had mentioned earlier, that feeling of hopelessness that can come along with it. So I'm just, sending you some peace and some love, Aaliyah. And I hope that things start to get a little bit better. And I would say, yeah, just work on it as much as you can. And I think that when you, if you are able to get the OCD a little bit more manageable, it can sometimes positively impact the feelings of depression. Again, that's not, clinical advice, but it's just something that I've kind of noticed in my experience and sharing, and hearing other people's stories as well. And then, Kalia, I'm sorry if I said that incorrectly. I have ROCD, and sometimes I fear being with my boyfriend for the fear of having a horrible intrusive thought. How do I not let it impact me as much? So again, for those of you who aren't super familiar with these terms, ROCD is relationship OCD. And it is something that can impact our romantic relationships, but it also can impact our platonic friendships and family members, the relationships that we have with our family members, with our teachers, with our bus driver. It really can impact your relationship with any human. So you are asking if you're worried about being with your boyfriend for the fear of having an intrusive thought. So if you were avoiding your boyfriend because you have the fear that you'll get a thought, that's a compulsion, and avoidance is a compulsion. So I would say embrace it, be with him even more. If your OCD is telling you to turn around and walk the other way because you have fears, turn around and keep going. Again, that seems so simple, and I don't mean it to sound simplistic in that way, because I know it's not that easy, but that really would be my advice is to, be with him and do the opposite of what the OCD thoughts are telling you to do. If you have a horrible thought when you're with him, that just means that you had a horrible thought when you're with him. It doesn't change the outcome of your relationship. So that would be my, my piece of advice there. Hello, I see lots of familiar faces here. Lots of people here. And then I'm not sure who this person is. It says this is me, but why won't you give the reassurance? I will answer this question, because giving reassurance and seeking reassurance. So if you are asking something of somebody to be reassured, that's a compulsion. And although it might relieve your anxiety temporarily, over time it doesn't. And I know that's again a simple, kind of a simple response to a difficult question, but it really is the truth. And if we keep asking for reassurance and we keep getting reassurance, we're never going to move on, honestly. And that's kind of my response there. So it's for your own good to not ask for reassurance, and then for the other person to not give it, because that is just giving into the compulsion, if you will. And the more we do that, the harder it is to keep going with our days. So that is why I don't like to give reassurance, and it's important to understand that, I think. Yes, so we can definitely live a normal life. We can get married and live happily. Yes, I like reassurance as well. That's the problem, honestly, is that it's our OCD talking when it asks us to keep getting reassurance. So yeah, and that's the hard part, is recognizing that it's a compulsion to ask for that reassurance and to expect it. So it's better in the long run, as difficult as it is at the time, it is better in the long run to not. Strawberry lemonade, I apologize that I missed your question. There are a lot, so I'm not able to get to all of them. If you want to ask it again, I would love to get to it. And I'm sorry. Yeah. So I'm trying to find which one you're talking about. Aaliyah did say that whenever I try to give myself some grace, my brain tells me that I'm worthless and selfish for trying to love myself. Any tips? Yeah, that's tricky. When our brain, is telling us these harsh things about ourselves. My go-to for that is, if your friend came to you, or your partner, or your parent, or your child, or anyone that you love dearly, came to you and had these thoughts and was struggling and was, opening up to you about what they're going through, your response, I almost guarantee it, would be compassion, and would be patience, and would be love. And I know, again, that's not an easy thing to do, to have that for ourselves. But it is the truth, is that we deserve love. We deserve those happy feelings. So I know a lot of people that do positive affirmations, and I don't mean in a compulsive way, but just when you wake up in the morning, look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that you are worthy, that you are selfless, that you are, that you deserve love. And the more we say it, our brain starts to believe it. And again, I that's hard. I don't mean to make these answers sound like they're things that you just are able to do. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of compassion and patience. So I am sending you all the good thoughts, not good thoughts, good well wishes, Aaliyah. So I'm not entirely sure with this question. So getting an A in therapy. So I'm not entirely sure how to answer that. Seeking reassurance is a compulsion, and your therapist, it sounds like you're in therapy, and your therapist knows that and knows when to, kind of when to help and when to push back on that. Okay, so how do I deal with my closest family members telling me to change my mentality so it'll stop, because it's just words I'm getting triggered by, they don't understand? Yeah, and that can be really challenging when people around us that we respect don't have the same reaction to the things that we're going through that we would like them to have. So you're saying they don't understand. I would say try to get them to understand. Try to find some articles, blog posts, this YouTube, other, lives that we've done, as that NoCD has done, or on YouTube. There are so many other really great just informational videos out there that explain what you're going through. If you're not able to kind of put it into words that you think they would understand, there might be somebody else out there that can. So I would say, try to get them to understand, have some passion, I'm so sorry. I keep mixing up patience and compassion for passion. I meant to say have some patience with them and helping them get to where you want them to understand what you're going through. If it's words that's triggering you, it's, again, the same as anything else that's triggering. So being open with them and trying to explain and help have other people explain it for you if you're having a hard time with that, I would say. How do you check? So it's a two-parter. It sounds like, how do you check? How do you stop yourself from checking the stove? Stop checking the stove for a fear of fire. So honestly, just like with any other, it sounds like the obsession that you have is that the stove is on fire or that there's some danger, and the compulsion would be to check it. So the reaction to the obsession is to check the stove, and it will give you that temporary relief in the sense that you'll see that it's not on and that there's not a fire. And then I don't want to speak for you, but you walk away and you think, well, what if it's on fire now? What if the stove is on? What if it somehow turned on? And that's part of OCD treatment, is accepting that maybe it is. I know, again, that is so much easier said than done, but we do need to accept that and kind of, I don't mean to say move on, but move through our day still with that fear being there. That's okay to be afraid and to know that we don't know. That is honestly my answer, is to recognize that we can't prevent things like that all the time. And then you've asked, can you prescribe medication? So that'll help. So there are medications that can be effective for helping treat OCD. They are typically antidepressants. So SSRIs is what they're called. You need to meet with a psychiatrist or another doctor, another family doctor, physician that would be able to prescribe that. So the gold standard for treating OCD is called exposure and response prevention, ERP therapy, and that is really what will most likely help you get the best results. There are certain medications that can work alongside the therapy, but the therapy is really where you should start, if that makes sense. But again, find a therapist that is able to prescribe medication if that's something that you think would help in your journey, and make sure that it's alongside the ERP is my response there. This is me has asked, I'm not sure how to stop making lists. If I don't physically write them, I have it in my head. I make a list for literally everything, and 2 years from now, I'm panicking about. Yes. So that can be part of OCD, can be compulsive list making. That is something I personally deal with and still struggle with today. So it's, it definitely can be a part of the OCD if that's what you're asking. Not sure how to stop making them. Again, the response would be to stop and to kind of interrupt that cycle. So again, you get the obsession that you might forget something, so you make a list about it. That's the compulsion, is to make the list, and that relieves the anxiety for right now, and then it comes back. And that's, again, the cycle of OCD. So I would say, recognizing that, knowing that is a compulsion, to make the list. And if you didn't make that list, that's kind of where you need to work with a therapist to help you figure out how to. That response prevention part is really important in the ERP, is recognizing how to stop that compulsion. And so what are the types of OCD? So there are different themes, subtypes. People call them by different things, but there are a couple that are kind of the main themes, if you will, in terms of what's kind of understood as, separated by certain themes. So There is harm OCD. There is pedophilia OCD. There is moral scrupulosity OCD, religious scrupulosity. There is, I hate that I am blanking right now. There is somatic or sensory motor OCD. There is sexual orientation OCD. There are others, and I don't mean to say that those have any more meaning or value than any other type of OCD, because at the end of the day, OCD is OCD, and it's the cycle. It's the O is the obsession. You get this obsession and this concern about something, this fear of something, and it causes you anxiety, and then you react by doing a compulsion, and that relieves the anxiety for the time being, and then it comes back with the vengeance. So it's recognizing that cycle and trying to break that cycle where you can is key to managing and recovering from OCD. So and I don't, there are other subtypes, themes that I am just completely blanking on right now. So I would, if anyone has any others that are something that they've dealt with, please feel free to correct me and to speak up right now, because I don't, there is a list, but it's never ending. It's, anything can become an obsession and anything can become a compulsion. Like we just said, list making can be a compulsion, and that doesn't necessarily fit under a certain type, if you will. There are so many, yes. So how to differentiate between an OCD-driven intrusive thought from an actual problem you need to solve? That is a great question, and I wish I had the answer. It is, I don't know necessarily. I don't know if there is a cut and dry way to differentiate. And again, that's not an answer really, but I don't know. And I think things that I've used in my kind of in my own journey is if I have this sense of urgency, like I need to know right now, that usually is kind of a key that it's an OCD thought. Again, that's not, and always the case, and that's not a great answer necessarily, but that's something that's worked for me, is if I can come back to this in 5 minutes and be okay with it in 5 minutes, then it's probably just a problem that I have that I need to solve. If I need to know this minute, and I cannot concentrate on anything else until I solve this question or answer what I need to know, that typically is a intrusive thought then. And again, everyone gets intrusive thoughts, even if you don't have OCD. So I think that's an important part to remember too, is intrusive thoughts are part of having a brain and having an imagination, and they don't, they're not, specific to OCD. So that's something to keep in mind too. How do I get, there we go. How do I get my family members to believe me but they don't because I'm a kid? Sorry, I stumbled over that. Again, being open, sharing what you can. And I think sometimes it's helpful to not, you don't necessarily need to go into details of what the intrusive thoughts are, but I think just kind of laying it out as, here's what OCD is, here's how I'm dealing with it, and here's what's been going on with me. And having some, again, articles, blogs, the IOCDF, the International OCD Foundation, it's just iocdf.org. They have a lot of really helpful articles on there, blog posts, videos, and other resources as well. And if you are able to get to a therapist, us at OCD, we are able to treat members as young as 6 years old. If that's something you're able to do, I would say definitely bring it up to family members, because that's really what's going to help you get through. Are you born with OCD? I like the hamburger picture, the cheeseburger, I should say. Are you born with OCD, or is it developed later in life? If it's developed later, what can cause it? So that, again, as I've said with other things, is not, there isn't really an answer. So some there are some studies and some research done to show that it is a genetic factor, but biological in the sense that we can be kind of predisposed to it, if that makes sense, based off of the genes that we have. There are studies to show that it's environmental in the upbringing that we have when we were children. There are studies to show that trauma can sometimes exacerbate the symptoms. So find somebody who is a researcher or a scientist to answer that question. But when you ask what can cause it, so many different things. And that's kind of, again, just the unanswerable questions are hard. So I don't know, honestly. I mean, I'm not entirely sure. Yes, contamination OCD, just right OCD, which is my main theme. I should have remembered that. And just right OCD. So there are, thank you, Lisa. I appreciate the response. There are so many that I did not think of. And they're all kind of part of the OCD umbrella. They're all family members. Yes. So an example of an intrusive thought, like wanting to go right off the expressway just to see what would happen, is that one, or am I so off? So an intrusive thought honestly just means one that we don't want necessarily. So it's unwanted. It can cause distress. Every person gets intrusive thoughts. So whether or not you have OCD or another mental illness, when you're driving down the freeway, you might get that thought that is, what if I just turn a little bit this way and go right off the edge? What if I drive headfirst into the 18-wheeler that's coming towards me? So yeah, that is an intrusive thought. It's the way that we react to it that really causes the distress, I guess. So yes, that can be an intrusive thought. Anything can honestly be an intrusive thought. So yeah, that is for sure. Yeah. So Lisa, I love that advice. Dr. McGrath, Dr. Patrick McGrath, he is fabulous. He oversees the therapists for us at OCD. He does not have OCD, but he is, like you said, a really great therapist who answers these questions so much more eloquently than I do, because he has a degree, multiple degrees in this, and really knows what he's talking about a little bit more than I do. So he's on Wednesday nights on right where I am right now, Wednesday nights at 8:00 Eastern. So I would say check those out. Again, go to our YouTube page. There's a bunch there that you can find from previous weeks. And he also hosts live Q&As throughout the week. I know he just did one a couple days ago, and he's great. So he would have much more put together answers than I do. Am I completely recovered? So that's a really fun question, in the sense that no, I don't think so. I think recovery is lifelong for me. I don't mean to speak for others, but in what I am finding in my years of now kind of going through treatment and understanding OCD a little bit better, it is something that I am going to have to work on forever. It's not going away. So I compare it sometimes to working out, in that if you stop working out, if you went through a workout program and then you just stop, all of those skills, all of those muscle gains that you just got are gonna slip away. And so I think it's important to relate it to that, in that you need to keep up with it. So it's a part of me having OCD. And that's okay. I've come to accept that it's going to be here forever. I would say I am in recovery, but not recovered, because I don't think that's a destination that you can ever really get to. And again, that's my belief. I don't want to sway your outcome on that. Let's see here. If you could go back to the first month of recovery, what would be your simplified advice? Thanks for doing these. Well, thank you for being here, first of all. And I love doing this. It's really, really enjoyable for me personally. If I could go back to the first month of recovery, wow, that is a really good question. I wish that I had gone to treatment years ago. I unfortunately took way too long to even know that I was dealing with OCD, and then years later to even be able to get the treatment for many different reasons. So I would say start as early as you can in getting treatment. If I could go back to my first month of recovery, I would say to have some patience. I remember wanting things to be better tomorrow, and or today, I should say, and that's not possible. It's not a quick fix. Like I was just saying, it's something I'm working on still every day. So I would to remind myself to have some patience and to know that every day that we move forward with OCD and with these skills that we learn is a good day, and it's a day that we're alive and breathing is good. But to recognize that it's not going to be changed overnight is probably what I would tell my younger self, if you will. Jenny asked, how do you deal with ERP when it's something that for so long you've worried about and you have to say your worry without your response? If you could clarify what you're asking, Jenny. I'm not entirely sure what that question is trying to get at. So I hope you are able to give a little bit more direction there, and I'll try to answer it if I can. My OCD is about how I have brain damage, but I also used drugs in college that could have done damage to my brain cells. Is it reasonable to seek more medical advice about my brain? I don't want to give you the wrong direction, Davis. So I would say if you have a therapist, to bring this up with them. And I'll leave it at that because I don't want to step on any toes there. So one more question. I tend to feel if I stop worrying about my intrusive thoughts, or if they stop bothering me, that means I'm losing my head and I'm going to act on the stressful thoughts. So I'm not sure exactly what you are asking, Monica, but there is this thing called the backdoor spike that it happens when you're in recovery and you kind of get anxiety about not being anxious anymore. And so I know that is something that I have dealt with a lot, and that sounds like that's what you're asking, that if you stop worrying about the intrusive thought and they stop bothering you, that it's going to come true. And that's, again, just, that uncertainty is maybe they will, maybe it is this time real. That's important to remember. And I know that's not the answer you're looking for. But I would love a little bit more clarification on exactly what you're asking, just because I'm not sure what the question is. All right, so I'm going to scroll up a little bit. Oops. To see, okay, yeah, so no worries, Monica, no need to be sorry. Yeah, okay, so it sounds like that's what you're saying is the backdoor spike, that we're getting anxious, that we're not anxious anymore. And that's honestly, as hard as it is to understand, that's a good thing. That means that you are making some progress in your treatment and in your OCD recovery or journey. And so, accept it as part of the process. And the fact that you're not getting anxious about things that used to cause you anxiety, that's okay. That's part of it. And just kind of keep going, keep going with that momentum and apply those skills that you learned to that. I know again, speaking from my own experience, when I was going through my treatment early on, there were things that I wasn't even working on intentionally. I can think of things in my relationship that I was not working on at all. It didn't come up in therapy sessions. It was not something that caused me anxiety. or I'm sorry, it was something that caused me anxiety, but I was not specifically working on it. And I noticed that they were getting better. And that scared me because I realized I don't have anxiety about this one area anymore. Why is that? And how, what am I doing wrong? And my therapist was like, that's actually a really good thing. That means that you are making progress, whether it's intentional or unintentional. You're doing something that is allowing those, kind of thoughts to not bring as much distress on. So I think that is, it's a good thing, Monica. How do you sit with the uncomfortable ERP? So Andrea, it's awesome to see you again. And this answer is going to sound so easy, and I know it's not, but do nothing. Sit there, sit with it, accept the thoughts, allow them to exist, allow them to be a part of what you're going through. And something that I've found to be really helpful is to, recognize what you want out of life or out of that day, and work towards that, even though you have uncomfortable thoughts. And I think that that's a lot of times with OCD, we have kind of black and white thinking that we have to either be anxious or not anxious. We have to be happy or much gray area. There's so much that takes place in that gray. So I would say you can be uncomfortable and still do the things that you want to do. So that's what I would say with that one is, let it be there. Let the uncomfortable feelings, the icky feelings, the anxiety, the distress, let it all exist and still do the things that bring you joy. So it is 9:00. I every week am amazed at how fast this goes by, or how quickly this goes by. So I appreciate all of you for being here. I am so thankful to work for OCD, to be a part of this community, to know that you are all here as a part of the community. You are kind of like my family in a way, and I love it. So next week I will be back this exact time, this same place probably, and there will be a new an OCD advocate on with me. So I hope you guys all have a great night, a great weekend, a great holiday weekend if it is a holiday where you are. And I personally am going to go watch the Friends reunion, and I've been putting it off all day. Well, I've been at work all day and now here. So I'm really excited to have done this, to have gotten a chance to chat with you all. And I will see you guys all next Thursday.